Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Friday, July 18th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 571 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. And today we've got some more New York Jets news to discuss. Mason Taylor has signed his rookie contract after there being some potential of a training camp holdout with the second-round draft pick. Mason Taylor has signed. Rookies report tomorrow. He will be there. We'll break that down and what it means for the New York Jets. And I also want to dive into a recent article written by Rich Cimini of ESPN revealing the 4 keys to success for Aaron Glenn. Really thought it was a well-written article and wanted to break down each of those keys and kind of reveal the blueprint and the plan for Aaron Glenn to have success here with the New York Jets as training camp is just a couple days away. We will discuss that as well a little bit later on. Apologies for the slight lack of content over the last couple of days. Actually had my wisdom teeth removed, so have been recovering from that, but felt good enough today to get an episode out for you guys. And next week, we're hitting the ground running. Next week on Monday, I'm going to start my player preview series. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, all throughout training camp, we'll have 2 players each of those days, breaking down what to expect from each of those guys, one on offense, one on defense. We, of course, do that every single year here on the podcast. So really enjoy doing those episodes. That will start up on Monday. We'll have recaps after every single training camp practice. So can't wait for that. This is some of my favorite time of the year here is covering training camp, doing the player previews. The summer football content is awesome. So next week we're hitting the ground running. So don't worry. There will be a ton of content here as training camp gets rolling beginning next week. And on Monday, we will, of course, begin our yearly player preview series. So look forward to that. But anyway, today we got to get through some stuff here before we get to training camp that begins here in a couple days. And rookies report tomorrow for the New York Jets, with the veterans reporting on the 22nd, which is Tuesday. First practice will be Wednesday, the 23rd. First open practice will be Friday, the 25th. Mason Taylor, right? We heard, we talked about this actually earlier in the week, the possibility of Mason Taylor being a holdout of training camp because of what was going on with these second-round picks across the NFL, right? This wasn't just a Jets issue. This was an entire NFL thing. Up until earlier this week, you had 30 of 32 second-round picks unsigned. The only 2 that were signed was Jaden Higgins and Carson Schwessinger, who signed 2 fully guaranteed contracts. And things really started to get interesting when Trey Harris of the Chargers last week, who reported last week, held out. He now got a contract since, but that, of course, started to put some more steam to this whole situation. But the Jets have avoided it. Alfred Collins the other day, the Niners signed his. So recently here you started to get over these last couple of days, over his last kind of 48 hours, it felt like we were getting pretty close to a Mason Taylor deal, because around the league, you're starting to see some second-round pick deals get done, and that's what happened today with Mason Taylor. Here are the specifics of this contract. It is a 4-year, $10.46 million deal. 91.3% of it is guaranteed. So that is 9.56 million in guaranteed, and 60% of year 4 salary is guaranteed, which is a 55% increase from the number 42 overall pick last year, which was Kamari Lassiter of the Houston Texans. And he had an entire guaranteed contract of 79% overall. So definitely a tick up there for Mason Taylor. But if you're a New York Jet fan, this is a good thing. This is a huge positive. This is something that I think we all expected to get done, but there was that chance, there was that possibility earlier in the week where as each day went by, you were kind of curious how much longer, not just with Mason Taylor, but around the NFL, because this is something we have never seen before. Up until this year, there has never been a second-round pick to receive a fully guaranteed contract, and that was the holdup. But as I mentioned just a little bit ago, there's been some moves that have already been made. Trey Harris, Alfred Collins that have happened. Mason Taylor now follows, and it's a positive. And huge, huge praise needs to be given to Darren Muji and this New York Jets front office for getting this move done. Number one, but also locking up Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. They're the New York Jets now. Rookies reporting tomorrow. Mason Taylor will be in the building at One Jets Drive. The New York Jets now enter training camp without any contract drama, without any holdouts, without any real outside noise. That has been their motto. Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn, since they took over in January, their motto has been to move in silence. And throughout the offseason, they moved in silence. They did just that, right? But as we got closer to training camp here, you had questions. What would a Sauce Gardner contract look like? When will that happen? When will the Garrett Wilson contract happen? Are those things that are going to leak into training camp, right? What about Mason Taylor? That was another factor in this all. And fast forward now, just a couple days before Veterans Report, rookies tomorrow, the New York Jets have put together quietly a very strong offseason, and they now enter training camp with no outside noise. Think back this time last year, you had the Hassan Reddick contract holdout, which was shortly then followed by a trade request. That was complete nonsense. We all know how that, of course, ended with him eventually joining the team and doing absolutely nothing on the field to help the team. You even go back to some other rookies to kind of tie into the Mason Taylor situation, right? The Zach Wilson back in his rookie year. Remember the offset language. Even Sam Darnold, they began camp with contract issues, both of those guys. So the Jets have a long track record here of both rookies and even just other players holding out, having these contract disputes leak into training camp. They enter this training camp with everybody locked up. All the rookies signed. Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner got their extensions. Job well done by Darren Muji. And from the Mason Taylor perspective, it was very important for them to get this Mason Taylor contract done, because specifically for Taylor, any rookie, but specifically for Taylor, training camp's huge for these guys. And why it's so big for Mason Taylor is he should be this team. He is going to be this team, bearing something unforeseen, their starting tight end. He is going to play a big role for this offense. I thought he put together a really good spring. I thought he had a very strong OTAs. You want to now see that get carried into training camp, and you wanted to be there for every single practice. There's a reason the rookies report a couple days earlier. You want him there, continuing to learn the playbook, continuing to build the chemistry with Justin Fields, find his role in this offense, take what he did at LSU and now develop some of those traits into an NFL level abilities, right? This is a guy that's going to play a big role. There's a real chance he is this team's potentially third most targeted receiver this year, only behind Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. If that's how things play out, he needs to be there. He needs to work. He needs to learn. He needs to grow. He will be, and that's important. So the Mason Taylor contract and the Mason Taylor potential camp holdout is over. He is signed. Jets get the deal done. Credit to Darren Muji. No major holdouts, nothing. All business. That's what well-run organizations do. And the New York Jets are acting like grown-ups right now with the way they've handled the financials this offseason as they wrap up Mason Taylor's contract earlier today, a day before rookies report tomorrow to One Jets Drive. So that's the Mason Taylor stuff to open up today's podcast. I also wanted to get into here some things on Aaron Glenn. Rich Cimini, who of course covers the New York Jets here for ESPN, I thought wrote a really, really good article on the 4 keys to success for Aaron Glenn as the New York Jets head coach. And he basically laid out essentially the blueprint, the plan for Aaron Glenn. And I wanted to break down each of the 4 pillars, each of the 4 keys of success, as of course we are just a couple days away from Aaron Glenn really hitting the ground running here with the New York Jets. The 4 keys, and we'll break them down one by one, but these were the 4. Establish toughness, number 1. Improve situationally, number 2. Create accountability, number 3. And win the trust of the locker room, number 4. So I'm just going to go in the order of they were listed. Number 1, establish toughness. Rich Cimini, again, I think did a great job with this, and I think all 4 of these are huge, huge keys. And you can maybe think of other keys, but these 4, I think, are really good foundational points for what the New York Jets need to do better under Aaron Glenn, and more so what they haven't done well in the previous regime. And I think establish toughness, number 1, is important right away, right off the bat. This has been a Jets team, not just mentally are they soft, and internally inside that locker room have they been soft, but on the field, they've been soft. They've gotten pushed around in so many games over the last couple years, especially last year, right, where they were getting pushed around, getting beat in the trenches, just getting absolutely dominated by teams that were more physical than them. There was no toughness. There was no physicality. There was none of that nastiness. And Aaron Glenn, since taking over, has mentioned the importance of nastiness, the importance of physicality, the importance of being able to go out there and win games in the trenches and be that type of nasty team, which is similar to Dan Campbell's model in Detroit of that nasty, competitive, physical football team. And I think you look at the New York Jets here, it all starts, of course, up in the trenches, and that's football in general. And I think you look at this New York Jets identity, this is a team that should be more physical and is going to need to be. This is going to be a team that's going to have a run-first identity. They have a running back room headlined by Breece Hall and 2 promising second-year backs behind him in Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis that they are going to use a lot of. They have a quarterback that is one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the NFL, number 1, but number 2 is going to be used a lot on the ground because he's been his entire career. And I think the Jets' heavy play action should go off of the run. If they can get the run game going, that can open up the play action. That is, I think, a lot of what you're going to see out of this offense under Tanner Engstrand in year number 1. And in order to do that, toughness, physicality, that's all key. They got to win games in the trenches. This offensive line on paper and what we saw last year at times can be a top 10 unit, can be one of the better units in the NFL. Win games in the trenches by beating teams up front from an offensive line perspective. Run first offense. The best running teams in football are going to be your most physical teams. The Jets should be a run first team. You want to have success running the football, you've got to be tough. You've got to win up front. And defensively, the Jets haven't done a very good job of stopping the run. This year, they've got to change that. I think one of their biggest issues in not stopping the run, we talk a lot about gap integrity, right? That is true, though. I know it's a very geeky term, and it is a term that gets used a lot of, but it's the truth. The Jets lacked gap integrity last year. They lacked that true front 4 going all out, being able to stop the run. A lot of it was just selling out for sacks, trying to get personal numbers, and they lost against and they got beat against your physical rushing teams because they weren't tough, they weren't physical, on the defensive line at times last year as well. And you want to do that and stop the run, you're going to have to be physical. You're going to have to be tough. So I totally agree here with number one. Run first team, good offensive line. On paper, they should be tough, physical, win trenches on offense. Defense, same thing. You want to stop the run, which has been a weakness even when this defense was at its peak during the 2022 and 2023 season before they dropped off last year. Stopping the run was still an issue. You want to stop that? You want to be better against the run? Be tough, physical, win the battle in the trenches, gap integrity, all of those things. So that was number one. Number two was improve situationally. And I think this is another big one as well. All four of these are, of course, big. But something that was such an issue under Saleh, Ulbrich, and last year just in general, and what was a complete mess of a season, as we all know, late game situations last year, the New York Jets blew up in. And this is really going to be a big teller in who Aaron Glenn is as a head coach from an in-game perspective, right? In terms of how can he win the little margins? How can he win in the little things against other coaches? We always talked about that with Robert Saleh not being able to win against some of the AFC's better coaches when it came down to late game time management, late game decision-making, late game adjustments, all of those things. And you look at the numbers, it backs it up. Samini in this article broke it down really well. 59% of games last year in the NFL were decided by one score. The Jets went 5-12 last year, as we know, and were 3-7 in one-score games. 5 of those, they had the ball in the final 2 minutes, and in total, they were outscored 26-10 in the final 2 minutes of regulation and overtime combined. And this, of course, was a multitude of things, whether it was blown coverages. We saw that in the Colts game last year, whether it was sacks, penalties. I even throw in lack of urgency. The Jets offense last year never really ran with much tempo, even in late game situations. It was always sloppy. It was always lacking a real sense of urgency. You had a lot of penalties. It was a lot of just not recognizing the situation. The Jets have got to be better with that. And I've always said this, Robert Saleh's time management was awful. It was abysmal. So you want to throw in its own category of pillar of success for Aaron Glenn could be time management. But situationally, time management all kind of falls under the same umbrella. Time management under Robert Saleh was awful. Timeouts were awful. Blowing timeouts early in the third quarter. How many times do we see that under Robert Saleh? There was also so many times late in the game where he wouldn't take a timeout. Or late in the first half, he wouldn't take a timeout. And it's not like you can carry those timeouts into the second half. We saw the same thing with Jeff Ulbrich. It was mind-numbing, some of the time management we saw. That's something Glenn's got to work a lot on and something he's got to be better with. And hopefully he can be. We don't know if he will be, right? Only time will tell. But improve situationally is another thing. You look at the best teams, the Chiefs last year were, I think, 14-1 or something like that in one-score games. If you're good, being good in one-score games as opposed to not being good in one-score games can make your season look a whole lot different. Just think if the Jets were 7-3 last year in one-score games and were actually coached well. Be a totally different story. Right? So that's second pillar of success here for Aaron Glenn. In-game moments, those in-game situations. And just from the players as well. Can't have those blown coverages. You can't have those sacks. A lot of that is schematic, late-game stuff, 2-minute offense, all that stuff, right? Defense last year was supposed to be very good to play with leads. It wasn't. That needs to improve this year. So, number 2 there for Aaron Glenn. Number 3, create accountability. This is pretty obvious and really could be the biggest X factor. Samini mentioned in this article the country club environment that was happening at One Jets Drive, especially last year where Jeff Ulbrich took over. The locker room really lost it at that point. It was pretty much every man for themselves, playing for the name on the back, not the name on the front. There was no sense of accountability. It was so bad that Jeff Ulbrich went in front of a microphone and actually praised Hassan Reddick for being unselfish. And I believe, if I remember correctly, Ulbrich in that interview went as far as to say he was one of the most unselfish players he's ever been around. Not just unselfish, one of the most unselfish he's ever been around. I mean, that's pathetic. The guy held out of training camp. The guy didn't join the team until halfway through the year when the season was pretty much lost already, right? And you're going to call him unselfish? Those little things. Publicly always backing players, always making excuses. The Jets under Saleh was always excuses. There was never a sense of urgency. And none of that. And that led to that country club environment. There was no accountability. The Jets have been near the top of the league in penalties the last couple of years. That can't happen. It's all accountability. And so far, the early signs with Glenn have been positive. Now, again, it's July 18th. All we have to go off of is a couple OTA practice and 3 days of mandatory minicamp. But the early signs have been positive. You've seen some of the players already talk about if things aren't going right, Glenn, even during the spring, made it known. There was that Fields clip. Fields, in one of his interviews during the spring, mentioned that there was one practice that Glenn felt the team didn't practice well. They heard about it. Even though it was a spring practice, he made it clear he did not like what he saw. He made it clear he was upset with the way they practiced that day. And that is something that needs to change. It needs to be that high level of accountability where if you don't like it, you don't like this way, then get out. That's how it's got to be. It's that tough nose coming from that Bill Parcells tree. That's what Aaron Glenn needs to bring. Early signs are positive, especially with the way he's handled the media. He's handled the media much better than Saleh. And I think that's even maybe another pillar of success as well. But accountability early on, from what we've heard, it's there with Glenn. It's got to continue, but the early signs are positive, and it's huge. Without accountability, you're going to get the high amount of penalties they've had. You're going to get the players pretty much it's just a loose environment, no urgency. I mean, Lazard said it last year, I believe it was, right? They were 2-2, and he was like, oh, it's, we're not in a bad spot. It's, it was always never really that bad. It was always, it's okay. We'll get them next week. No, it's not. That can't happen. So number 4, and the final one, was win the trust of the locker room. And similar to the accountability, I think the early signs are good. Early signs are players buying in. I think that shows with the Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner extensions, right? The fact that both of those guys were at OTAs, at mandatory minicamp, they could have easily held out, say, I want a new contract. Garrett Wilson as well. One of the first things Aaron Glenn did after he got the job was call Garrett Wilson and talk about his plan. Moving on from Rodgers clearly helped, but Garrett also clearly has a belief in Glenn, or else he wouldn't still be here, because there was a real chance, there was real unhappiness with Garrett Wilson that he could have requested a trade. But with them moving on from Rodgers, bringing in Fields, his college teammate, that certainly helps. But also he's bought into Glenn's plan so far. So early on, the locker room believes. But at the end of the day, they got to win football games. You win the trust of the locker room by winning football games. That's what they've got to do. They've got to go out there, they've got to win, and they've got to have success on the field. And I do think there is something to winning the trust of the locker room. I do think there is something to be said about a lot of these coaches are former players. There is something to be said about a former player. They don't always make the best coaches, but there is something with a former player, especially Glenn, been in this market, been with the Jets, saw a turnaround right under Parcells, coming from that tree. He's been in their shoes. And I think he knows what a player needs to hear. And the players, I think, also can gain a little bit of a higher level for respect for a guy that's also been in their shoes and understands what they're going through, what their mindset is. There is something to be said about that, and that can help win the trust of the locker room by being a former player, and your voice carries a little bit more weight because you've been in their shoes. You understand what they're, dealing with, all that, their mindset, all that, what the player needs in that certain spot. But the players as well, from Glenn's perspective, understand he's been here, he's done that, and he's done that in this organization. And he's in a similar spot where he was a part of a turnaround, and he needs to turn this thing around. So, and then that's something that's you got to bring into play. And at the end of the day, as I mentioned, you got to win games. They win football games, you're going to win the trust of the players. And hopefully the Jets can win some football games this year because they don't do that much. So that'll do it. Another episode down. Appreciate the support as always. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below on Mason Taylor's contract. Your thoughts on that. Your thoughts on a drama-free entrance to training camp. This is great. This doesn't happen very often for the Jets. The Jets are acting like grown-ups. That's a positive. Let me know what you think about that. Your thoughts on Aaron Glenn and his blueprint for success and any other Jets thoughts you've got. Leave them down below. Appreciate your support as always. Stay tuned. A lot more content coming your way. Potentially might have some episodes up this weekend. If not, stay tuned for Monday. We'll have our first player preview episode up. As I mentioned, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, throughout the entire training camp. 2 players each of those days predicting, previewing their 2025 season. So appreciate your support. Training camp, of course, will be here after every single practice. So lots of content. The dead zone, the dead period in the NFL, it's over. Training camp's here. Can't wait to have it covered for all of you. Appreciate you so much. And until next time, Jets, Jets, Jets.